Oh, choo choo choo-boogie. Take me right down to Track Jack. Oh, sorry didn't see you standing next to me on the courtyards now, my friend. Allow me to introduce myself and let you know that my name is Dennis Kim, and I work as a conductor for my local train company, Chili Charlie Express Lines. Well, at least I used to work for them until an incident happened. As an incident that is shocking, so Christmassy, that the mere attention that sends shivers right down my spine to my ass. The story is about a cursed version of the delightful Christmas classic known as the Polar Express. The viewing of this film resulted me in getting fired from Chili Charlie Express. So put on your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, and if you don't, then I will know about it. Polar Express is a classic Christmas film about a young boy who goes on a magical train called the Polar Express. Duh! The young lad does not believe in Santa Claus and is now on a train headed for the North Pole. He finally begins to learn the true meaning of Christmas. The boy comes across several colorful characters, introducing a girl and a boy named Billy who wears massive willies, and the willies are so big that it causes Billy to trip into the snow in one scene. Upon finally reaching the North Pole, the boy hero is given a first gift from Christmas by Santa Claus himself, and the rest is history. Now that we've discussed about the plot of the movie, let me tell you something. My wife and I have a yearly tradition of watching the Polar Express every year on Christmas Eve, and she always cooks the enormous meals for an occasion. I mean, seriously, the meals are so big that the plates can go from London all the way to Vice City. Sadly, our yearly tradition is canceled this year as my boss informed me that I would have to work on the trains on Christmas Eve. My boss was a horrid pot-bellied, red-faced boy who just has a bad temper that you've never seen. Hard as sharp as a razor blade. His name was Winston Big, but not everyone on the train line referred to him as Mr. Big, as no one dared to call him by his first name. Because if you did, oh man, if you did, he'd throw you underneath the moving train sometimes. Mr. Big, if he felt that his trains weren't running smoothly enough, that he would throw you under the train's fire. Yes, for some reason we are in the knee deep of the new century. Mr. Big prefers using steam trains. In fact, our company only uses steam trains. We don't have any of the new modern fragile shite. Mr. Big was the one who informed me that I'd be working the late shift on Christmas Eve. Upon giving me the news, I asked me, but why? Mr. Big grabbed me by the suit collar and he lifted me up high into the early morning sky. Don't you question me, you little gobshite. I ought to feed you to the junkyard dogs, you know. Oh my good otters, not the junkyard dogs. You see, security at Chili Charlie Express Lines is our company's top priority. We need to make sure that everyone who uses the trains feels safe. We used to have this really stupid tiger with a security guard. I shall not give out his name out for privacy reasons, but all I could say is that the tiger would force people on the train to participate in the karaoke sing-song. If you had to sing a song that you had no choice for the matter, then if you didn't sing, he forced you off the train. Thankfully, the tiger disappeared a few years back, and he hasn't been seen since. I heard his friends up in Queens that the tiger, who had owed a lot of money to yield to Southport, as he last saw the things of getting into the car with some beefy money lenders. Some say that they had saw the tiger living up in the hills in Greece, but I began to beg a differ. Oh, do I love a big good beg. Yes, I do. So with our dear tiger gone, Mr. Big decided to have some really dumb junkyard dogs to serve as new security guards. Once they were so annoying, the leader of the junkyard dogs would do a proper dumb dog named Buster. Buster had always asked you if you're worthy to join the junkyard dogs. He did ever learn to deep inside that he was very shallow, like the shallow end of a swimming pool, and Berlin, I know what I mean. The junkyard dogs always patrol the train yard areas for the best of their ability, but they rarely as if they actually did anything. We've been robbed constantly by several gangs operating in the area who steal some paperwork for no reason. I reckon that they are handling the papers over to a Guy Fry. Guy Fry was always hated our guts, and he was also given a bad lamb kebab while on the train for some Merced to Sweden. He ended up getting stinking his whole entire bloody train out, so in a reaction to his incident, guy began to screaming something with Western Railroads and the Virgin in the latter, which no one has used to pawn the pressure people to stop using our trains. That was certainly not the guy that I know. He was just a greasy spoon, but I would trade anyway if he'd come back to stay. So now you guys have to know some background of how Chili Charlie Express lines operate. I think it's time that we get into the real meat and potatoes of the tale at the head. So let's sit back, relax, and I told you the story of the Polar Express copy that shouldn't be seen. I arrived at the train yards at 4:45. It was already pitch black on the train yards, and the local street hobos were stomping their feet against outside with the new convention center. Meanwhile, the lamp lighters at the work began to play their trade, and they were lighting the lamps and not the rat that dusk had fallen. And it was Christmas Eve certain. I headed towards the local cafe, and had myself a hot chocolate at the cafe. The cashier looked like Sylvester Stallone. In fact, it was the exact replica of that famous actor. He stated my identity, and as I drank my delicious hot chocolate. After finishing my drink, I paid the cashier in full, and upon leaving the cashier did a strange thing. He grabbed me by the waist and forced me head to face him. "I got something to give you. A little early Christmas present," the cashier explained as he pushed underneath the table. He pulled out a DVD shaped like a present and wrapping paper. Obviously, duh! The cashier then handed it to me as a present, and he asked, "Well, ain't you gonna open it, my little son of a wood?" "Well, I think I'll wait till the big day to start opening up presents," I explained, when all of a sudden the cashier pulled out a revolver and pointed at my chest. "Open the present right now, son!" the cashier yelled at the top of his lungs. As I did so, I unwrapped the present, which was nearly impossible because the cashier had wrapped it so much that it took me over an hour to unwrap the one layer of it. You must think that I'm really agitating? Oh, trust me, I wish I was. After I finally unwrapping the present, I saw that it was none other than a DVD for Polar Express. It didn't look right. The snow on the front cover was red instead of blue, as it made me vomit onto the wooden floor of the cafe. Though color blue had always been the effect of me ever since I saw the blue M&M performing Mozart and the Lobster Inn. He was extremely talented Candy, but I didn't think it was just Candy for singing for him, obviously. To be honest, I was very grateful for the present that we always show a movie on train with journeys with an extra long. Suddenly, I was then reminded that I haven't asked Mr. Big on where he was actually going. I actually turned on my heel and left disappearing into the cold, damp streets. However, when I got my outside, I turned around to see that the cashier followed me. "What are you doing out here, asshole?" I asked, confused, as the cashier responded by pointing his revolver right in my bald head. "Don't call me that, you punk. You were the last order of the day. I'm coming on that train, and I just got locked up first. See you there," the cashier explained, as he locked the door of the cafe. Meanwhile, I headed over to Mr. Big's office, which was located on a small warehouse at the very end of the train yards. Inside the office, Mr. Big was reading from a newspaper, which detailed and rise of a price for a raw cookie dough. After seeing me enter his office, Mr. Big placed his newspaper down on the desk and asked instantly, "Can I help you, son?" He didn't even bother to decorate his office for Christmas. The rude carrot onion. Yeah, I was wondering, where exactly are we headed for fine Christmas Eve?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course," Mr. Big proclaimed happily as he rose from the desk. He led me right outside to the boardwalk. You've been seeing on the Sherry again, Big? The North Pole is like 9,000 miles away," I said, only to get slapped across the face by Big, who yelled, "Do what I tell you to do." Then he continued with, "And what does it matter to you anyway? You're just not the one driving, and all you gotta do is take the tickets and set up the movie. And buy the movie that you get, the Polar Express," I said bluntly, as Mr. Big grabbed my hand and saying, "Now I get it, let's go." We made our way onto the carriage, and that was when I learned that Mr. Big would be accompanying us for the protection due to the junkyard dogs being on their Christmas holidays. Lucky bastards. The train wasn't really very busy, given as it was after Christmas Eve. The passengers, including the cashier from earlier, Johnny, Wooly Hatson, Sam and Max, Colonel Dodo, and Trevor Evans as bus drivers, who used to take me on church back when I was in training to become a bishop. Upon seeing Colonel Dodo, I attempted to get off the train, but was prevented by Mr. Big. I hated that damn Dodo. He once killed my uncle for ratting me out as some of his partners to the governor. But I seriously looked it up. Colonel Dodo is a sick son of a gun, too. So I made my way up to the carriage and then towards the TV, and then that was hung from the ceiling. Underneath sat the DVD was a DVD. TV was a DVD player. I popped the disc inside and then began checking people's tickets. However, from outside the train, I could see the world-famous Detective Sam Bramsbury running towards the carriage. "Stop right there!" Sam cried as he struggled to throw his massive, overly heavy suitcase onto the carriage. He managed to climb on the carriage as he proclaimed, "Special Detective Sam Bramsbury. Sam to my friends as he spread to my enemies." Bramsbury was then wearing a ginger wig for some reason, so we asked Mr. Big, "Better find a seat, am I an old chap?" Yep, so Bramsbury found himself a seat near the DVD, and he started with an extremely weird commercial. The commercial had two weirdos visiting the M&M Christmas fair. They were extremely weird, but they kept bugging people about the fair of when they were going to try to eat their food. Ah, rude people. Oh, but I love the Len. The female weirdo exclaimed as she ate a taco covered in cheesy cheese. That's M&S Sponge, the male weirdo said as he made another weirdo that took over to the table, where he asked Billy Bob Tanley eating his Christmas dinner with a bunch of dodgy-looking BBC extras. "Tuck that in, don't forget your sprouts," the male weirdo joked while poking Tanley on the shoulder. All the BBC extras laughed at the joke, even though it was terrible. Billy Bob Tanley turned to face the two weirdos and he yelled, "Don't touch me, you dog!" Tanley then rose from his chair and then he began beating the snout out of the male weirdo. The narrator could be heard saying in the background, "Make your Christmas an M&S Christmas." Suddenly the DVD cuts to show a main menu that looked horrific. The conductor's face looked up a while on the screen, and it was zoomed in so much that you could see his nose hairs. "Oh, by Jove, that doesn't quite look right," Colonel Dodo joked as he lit himself a pipe. "Yes, Chilly Charlie railway lines allow people to smoke on trains. Maybe that's why we had so many frantical trouble at the last 20 years. Then I clicked on play movie, but nothing happened, and the DVD just stuck on the menu when all of a sudden the conductor's face began moving as he said, "Take the omelet without the eggs." And with that, the film finally started. Hero Boy was lying down on his bed, trying to get some sleep when he decides to head downstairs to see if Santa has been here yet. He crept downstairs and he saw Squidward. Squidward? Yes, Squidward. Squidward was dressed up as Santa and he was dancing around the living room, some classic 1970s jazz music. Upon seeing that the Hero Boy was out of bed, Squidward grabbed the chainsaw and yelled, "Get back to bed, boy!" Squidward then proceeded to chase Hero Boy upstairs, but thankfully Hero Boy was able to lock his bedroom door, fear by preventing Squidward from being able to get in. "Oh, buggering Buggerton," Squidward muttered as he made his way back downstairs, carrying not button for this darkness. The darkness was then cheap and Squidward liked it. Returning to bed, Hero Boy was on the verge of falling asleep until he heard something outside from his bedroom window. He couldn't be so sure, but it sounded like a train. He didn't get a chance to go outside to investigate the Polar Express, ended up crashing through the walls of his bedroom. Terrified beyond belief, Hero Boy then put on a dodgy-looking Shrek costume in order to look somewhat presentable to whoever crashed into his home. The conductor emerged from the stairwell of the train and asked, "Well, are you coming or not?" "Where?" Hero Boy asked. The conductor proclaimed, "Why, to the North Pole, of course! This is the Polar Express!" The Hero Boy looked as if he was going to say something else, but the conductor cut him off by yelling, "Get on the train now! We haven't got all day!" The Hero Boy then crept onto the train on his way as the conductor pulled his shotgun in order to make the boy get on faster. Now inside the carriage, the Hero Boy found himself a seat and sat down. However, the Hero Girl was not on the train. Instead, she was replaced by David Herod, the owner of Herod's convenience store. You know, all the good kids, the know-it-all kids' glasses were 1% larger than normal. That made me vomit onto Sam Bramsbury's ticket. "Oh dear, why didn't you sit next to me?" Bramsbury asked as he got up from the seat so I could sit down, and began gazing out the window. Meanwhile, Sam and Max were playing poker with Colonel Dodo. "Do you have any aces?" Sam asked as Colonel Dodo replied with, "Go fish." That doesn't sound anything like poker to me. But let's not judge where we live on the crazy world of fools, don't we, dear? dear reader? Well, anyways, Hero Girl, or Navid I should call to refer to him as that for now on, began pestering Hero Boy without buying some stock from him. Listen, buddy, I got to get out of here, the Hero Boy exclaimed as Navy began throwing curly whirlies at the young lad's face. Take them all, we have a party, Navid exclaimed at the top of his lungs. Suddenly, some really out-of-the-place Indian music began to play on the radio. Navid began to do some funky dance, which made me gag violently onto my pullover. The Polar Express then arrived in some districts of Michigan, which was introduced to Billy, the lonely boy. However, I could barely see him due to his willies. Now I thought that his willies were so abnormally large, but in the original film, but for some reason they seemed to be larger here. I mean, they were so big that Billy was unable to walk properly, and it kept struggling for his balance. He ended up falling on his face to the stone, and his willies began stretching at alarming speed. They stretched all the way up from the Polar Express to New York City. Billy tried to keep getting back from the snowy ground to speak with the conductor, but each time he kept falling over and over again. The conductor said, "Hey, I don't have time to waste time for you. Get on the next train." However, as the Polar Express began to pull away from the house, Billy began giving a chase as soon as to be over for 5,000 feet tall. He then chased the Polar Express for quite a while until he finally decided to get a latte from Starbucks, only to earn that Starbucks wasn't open. It was all Costa. So the conductor began stamping the tickets, and then he asked the passengers the desired refreshment. So the legendary hot chocolate song began to play. However, it was done in the style of 1980s rock ballad, and the conductor grew a massive mohawk and his tongue became green like a shrew. Eventually, the conductor offered the Hero Boy a cup, and then he declined it as Navid, who listened, boyo, drink the chocolate down, ya, the conductor yelled angrily as he forced the Hero Boy to chug down 100 cups of hot chocolate. I'm being serious here, people. The poor boy actually drank 100 cups of hot chocolate. After consuming all the hot chocolate, the Hero Boy's belly was so huge that it took up the entire carriage, crushing the two kids to death in the process. The conductor didn't seem to mind as he said, "Now, young man, Christmas may not be important to some of us, but it's very important to the rest of us." He then was quite an ignorant bastard that was the conductor. He kind of reminded me of Winston the Big Inspect. Anyways, the conductor then decided to stamp the tickets. The stamp scene went on like normal until the conductor came in and asked Navid about his ticket. "I not got your ticket, man," Navid explained as conductor asked erratically. "No ticket?" Navid was then forced off the carriage by the conductor, but he didn't go without a fight as he was able to kill two of the conductor's employees who had offered to help get Navid off the train. However, Navid wasn't thrown off the train, much like the Hero Girl did in the actual film, because he became the new train driver. He ended up driving the Polar Express a tad off, of course. He then ended up crashing into a cafe inside of the Midland, Scotland. The cafe was very high class, and it was frequented by prime ministers and kings. Sometimes a bear at the cafe. The local Ronald Vailers was then filming an advert for Clit Bang, and due to the company's mascot Barry Scott was on holiday in Ibiza, it was rather ironic. Barry Scott hated that role so much that he was starring the role of Chain Bang's adverts, preventing him from the other parts. Ronald Novelis was trying his best to show off Clit by he could clean the bathroom sinks with ease. Could you possibly try this, Ronald? The director asked as Ronald responded with, "Nah, that's too difficult for me." The conductor, upon seeing Ronald, yelled, Get on the train right now!" You see, the conductor, Ronald Williams, who had both had the train underneath the agency and the wardrobe on the pump. Sadly, so the conductor's acting career never really looked, and this is why he barred with so much resentment for Ronald. So the Polar Express then crashes through the rest of the cafe, and it went down through the busy streets of Scotland, running almost everyone over as they passed by. Oh man, this is the Bullocks. If only the train that could do so much mine, I would be doing this the damn time, Navid proclaimed happily as he, while running, made for more at the people of the Polar Express. Eventually became lost in the Scottish Highlands. The train was swaying violently from left to right, and there was no longer on course as Navid then was taken to the wrong turn up upon the crossroads. While driving through the Highlands, a very smelly-looking polar bear began chasing the train. Oh God! the conductor cried at the top of his lungs. What's the matter, Navi asked as the conductor responded with, He's after me, honey! You see, the conductor stored honey on the Polar Express, and it was widely regarded that some of the best honey in the world. The conductor proceeded to have free shotguns, and he handed 2 over to the hero boy and Navid while he kept another one for himself. The trio made their way towards the honey carriage that was located at the very tall end of the Polar Express. On the honey carriage, the polar bear who was helping himself to some sweet honey, there was also some bees there. The bees looked nasty. I don't even know if I could call them bees because there were animators that might have been drunk that were animated this part because they looked like wasps and bees. The weird wasp hybrids were celebrating as the polar bear ate up the honey. You fat bear, Mr. Big proclaimed, who was busy eating some popcorn and threw some delicious pops at the screen. The conductor then proceeded to shoot the polar bear 5 times in the chest with a shotgun. One of the bee-wasp hybrids began crying hysterically, as he had planned on asking the polar bear to marry him. He had been so intended to ask the conductor to serve as the best man, but much like Richard Baggs' medical school dreams, it was not meant to be. "Ya greedy dirtbag," Navi cried at the top of his lungs that caused the conductor to say, "Young man, Christmas may not be important to some of us, but it is important for the rest of us." So the conductor, Hero Boy, and Navi left the honey card carriage behind, and they began making their way through the abandoned containment room. The containment room was used to store all the abandoned toys of Christmas. Navi found some damaged toys very funny. He picked some of them up and laughed at them. The conductor and Navi left the room, accidentally locking the door behind them. That's when the Hero Boy was confused. In as their Scrooge puppet, however, it was no puppet. It was the real Scrooge. "Dance with me, boy, dance with me," Scrooge proclaimed happily as he forced the Hero Boy to dance with him. It was some kind of dance that the old couple in Scotland used to do after being conned out of their millions by the local mayor who's got big plans for the tree. You know what I mean. However, Scrooge ended up getting too into the dance that he accidentally threw the Hero Boy out of the carriage window. However, that's when the film jumped back to the scene where the Hero Boy meets up with the hobo on top of the Polar Express. The hobo offers Boy a cup of joe, which actually looked disgusting. Like, no joke, there was actually a slug coming out of the cup. Hero Boy slowly drank the disgusting drink down, and he began coughing out his intestines. The hobo grabbed the boy by the neck and held him over the edge of the room. "Nobody spits out one of my coffees," the hobo proclaimed as he began to throw the Hero Boy off the ledge. But in reality, Hobo had actually killed the boy because the hobo is an old friend of Connor and family. The Hero Boy had informed by the Federal Bureau of Nazis that he had tricked one of the feds into thinking that Coraline was actually involved in drugs. This led Don Mitchell ordering Hobo to kill the boy. He was a truly sick, twisted duck at that, Hobo, but let's not judge this because his mother used to force him to eat his shoes for breakfast. My shoes. Oh, my shoes. Needing to relieve myself, I got off my seat and waved my way to the toilet, only to learn that it was out of order. "God damn it," I muttered to myself. Then I need to relieve myself in Colonel Dodo's glass of pre-war scotch. "Oh, you piece of crap," Colonel Dodo yelled at the top of his lungs as he began beating the snout out of Trevor Evans, who responded by throwing an extremely rare diamond-crusted egg out of the train window. "Oh, Trevor," Colonel Dodo cried in despair. Then he leapt out of the train window to a place a canoe. Dodo then began rowing after the egg, and I made my way back to the seat. Back in the film, the Polar Express then finally arrived at the North Pole, and it was just like the original film. The conductor spit all the passengers out in the groups of 2, and they were now stuck as if they were kind of funny. That the conductor did not refer to Santa Claus as Santa, instead referring to him as the Big Boss, who were those who voted Trump posters and plastered all over the walls of the North Pole. I mean, could that be anything other than a potential statement? However, unbest known conductor, the hobo and Navid had decided to sneak into Santa Claus's factory, where they came across all the presents, including the box that was addressed to Billy, the lonely kid from earlier. Now, Hobo opened the box to contain an Xbox Series X, still mint in the box. The hobo latched onto the box with dear life, and ended up falling down to the conveyor belt, which housed all the presents for Santa. The conveyor belt then began moving, and the hobo refused to let go of his sweet Xbox Series X. Eventually, the hobo and the Navid both ended up falling inside Santa's sack. Now that sounds really bad on Santa's, well, I think you get the idea. Oh, hang on, I'm sure we got it. They fell into Santa's shopping bag. Yes, that's what we're gonna call it. Now, Eventually, the pair ended up crashing into landing in the middle of the town square, and the elves had struggled to get Santa's damn shopping bag onto the sleigh. However, it was no fun as a Red, who is eventually the elves opened up the shopping bag, ushered Navi out. "Ah, shut up, you greedy dirtbag," Navi yelled as he was kicked off the shopping bag by the elves, who laughed hysterically at Navi's misery. Upon seeing that, as Hobo was holding on to one of the presents, an elf tried to get him to hand the damn thing over, but Hobo refused. "I'll take very good care of it, trust me," the elf said. Oh, damn that elf. His teeth were sharp as knives. His eyes were bloodshot, and also he had a nose of a Turkish garden hose. The hobo then ran away screaming as he threw a present right at the elf's stomach, which nearly caused him to vomit. I did have a throat laugh, which caused Sam and Max to glare at me. Sam even went as far as to remark, "Dear God, that's rather cold, son." Huddling up near the town square, everyone was gathered around the arrival of Santa Claus, and that is when he appeared. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was not Santa Claus. It wasn't even Tim Allen. No, my friends, it was former President Donald J. Trump. I guess that was Trump's job, as in he wasn't the president anymore. Trump then smiled a very smug smile as he made a podium appear magically. He stood behind the podium and then began to make his incredibly boring speech about the cartels in Scotland or something along those magicians. "Grab ya a present and the wrapping paper," Donald Trump explained, as then he proceeded to be explained the Grand Master was to make the North Pole great again. In order to do this, Trump planned to be sending a series of elephants led by Connell Hardy to trample Joe Biden to death while he gives his big speech before he's officially given title of president. With Biden dead, Trump will then fall from the sky, convertibly placed in a helicopter, and to make the rightful place in the sun. That's when Trump decided to go to the first gift of Christmas. Hobo managed to be picked due to the fact that Trump loved how he played the beat down on his drum. It also helped that the Hobo was an old friend of Trump, with the pair being attended to photo him than many chilly Christmas mornings ago. Even now it seemed sad. Trump then grabbed Hobo by the neck and asked him, rather stupid voice, "Now what do you want for Christmas?" "A better Polar Express bootleg," I muttered under my breath. That caused Donald Trump to, and I'm not even joking, start climbing out of the television screen and onto the carriage. Donald Trump began making his way towards me with the little penguin with his hands held diving in the air. "We need to build a wall around the North Pole," Trump said as he got closer and closer. I hid underneath one of the chairs on the very far side of the train, so I would mention that during Trump's pursuit. No one else on the train would seem to be particularly bothered by the whole ordeal. Sam and Max were too busy with their card game and to notice that Trevor Evans was trying his best to con a sweet, cold old lady out of her millions by pretending to be the Sultan of Blackville. Phil, ever been there? Trust me, you don't want to go to that place. Well, let's put it bluntly, it's a shithole. Well, Donald Trump then began dancing. He began dancing towards me and then throwing a chair at me. I was hiding under the way, and now, glaring down upon me, Trump proclaimed, "You're gonna be huge." Suddenly, the most extraordinary thing happened to me, as Trump could kill me by throwing me out of the train. Johnny Woolly Hatson. Before I could get a chance to thank him out of the blue, the aliens have revealed to have a secret of their own. Removing his woolly hat, Johnny revealed himself to be a small zipper down. Woolly Hatson removed the zipper and then stripped down to revealing himself as none other than Joe Biden in disguise. "Thank you, Mr. Biden," I proclaimed happily, as Joe Biden was rather arrogantly. "Don't thank me for his son, thank the states." And with that said, Joe Biden climbed into the TV screen and declared that he would be delivering Christmas presents this year. So it was Joe Biden that delivered all the presents on Christmas Eve. The plot thickens. The film then cuts to show the hobo glaring back at the hero boy's house as he was allowed off the train, framed by the conductor. "Now then, get the hell to bed!" the conductor yelled at the very top of his lungs. He pulled out the shotgun from earlier and began shooting at the hobo, but ended up shooting all the windows of the house. He didn't even shot the snowman. You know something? That snowman really had a successful career after sharing a Christmas music video with the Wizard. However, that all changed with a smelly, incredibly Scotsman stole his fame. Perhaps one day he shall write a small book about it, and shall name it Blood Chills. Well, so whatever that is, the hobo goes to bed and then wakes up the next morning to be horrified that he learned that Squidward is still there. However, Squidward doesn't look like himself. Instead, he looked incredibly handsome. The hobo and handsome Squidward sat down in the living room to open presents. However, there was only one remaining present, which Hobo had not yet bothered opening. Upon opening the present, Hobo was horrified to get a grenade. Attached to the grenade was a letter from Donald Trump. Here's what the letter said. Dear Hobo, so you thought you had it got it in the bag, did you, boyo? Well, you're gone wrong. Love, Donald Trump. The hobo had no other choice to react as the grenade ended up exploding in his hands, causing the whole house in the mess and the fire madly covered in animation. While the hobo died instantly from the explosion, handsome Squidward didn't. It began dancing around the house while screaming, "No!" He did this while he was placing Italian opera music playing in the background. Squidward then collapsed on the floor dead as the credits began to play. They were all normal. However, there was a post-credit scene that featured some really dumb people giving each other presents. However, these dumb people were stupid little shrew. She ended up shaking the present, which caused the cake inside of the present to become completely useless. Upon looking up at the present, it was the dumb shrew that pulled an incredibly shocked face, but then laughed it off by serially, "It's my birthday!" Her voice was incredibly gruff sounding, although it was incredibly flat judged by laughing at her antics and began sobbing heavily. According to my sources, every night that the judge cries himself to sleep, some stories, some Luca. The TV ended up blowing up and the cashier then got up from my seat and began clapping very slowly. He was quite as smug as he asked, "Well, what did you think? This was certainly not the Polar Express that I know and love," I cried in despair as I sunk to my knees. The cashier was then removed his uniform and revealed himself to be wearing an extremely fancy, tolerated suit underneath it. That's when it dawned on me. The cashier was actually Sylvester Stallone the entire time, needing some answers. Sam and Max proceeded to ask Stallone about why he had gone through this troublemaking to make a bootleg tape of or DVD of a classic Christmas. "So I made it so I could have some time to distract you," Stallone said as I asked. "Distract us?" "Yes, son. Now picture this," Stallone said, and as he planted out his evil plan. Basically, Stallone had gotten the blue bootleg from Guy Fieri and had a pair which conspired to use it to distract us while they played the series of bombs underneath the wheels of the train. What really distressed me most of all was that I learned from Stallone had paid Mr. Big to force me to work at night, so I was too into the scheme. I began crying hysterically. "How could you do this?" I asked as Mr. Big replied with, "Well, it's the corner of the stone of the bakery, is it not?" Completely ignored by the question, I uttered one. I then proceeded to jump out of the train window, and using all my strength I was able to climb underneath the carriage. Sylvester Stallone wasn't lying. Underneath the carriage was about 69 different types of dynamite. Challenging myself as inner strength, I began yanking all the dynamite off the train and throwing them all into the deep dark sea. Once I was for sure all the dynamite has been disposed of, I made my way back inside the carriage, only to find old Stallone was still smiling an incredibly smug grin. He would have continued by smiling and except for the fact that Sam Bramsbury appeared from behind him smoking his pipe. Bramsbury said, "No need to fear, Dennis, I saw everything." Arriving in brown-mouthed Mr. Big and Sylvester Stallone, both carried off the train by Max and Sam. Meanwhile, Bramsbury made her way towards the town cafe, where we helped ourselves with a cup of tea and cheeky scone. Well, you probably know what they say, a scone and a tea at 3:30 makes the day a lot bit easier. Bramsbury then proceeded to explain the whole story behind Stallone and Big's big plan. Basically, Mr. Big, knowing that his train company was falling behind on profits due to other rival train companies stealing his customers, he allowed them to be by himself to Guy Fieri. Guy Fieri's plan was to be blown up the train, but that was because Mr. Big was out of the train as the explosion that he took would died from the explosion. In reality, Mr. Big and Stallone would have survived the explosion, hiding the train in the freezer. The pair then made phony passports so then they can go run to Bolivia, where they could find some more work down the docks. They would have to work on such long, hard hours, but they believed that at the end it'd be very worth it. Bramsbury then went on to explain that the company would lose its stores, and that Mr. Big would split his retirement with Guy Fieri and Sylvester Stallone. I sip on my tea and I began to ponder what happened to Guy Fieri. So did you guys manage to catch the Guy Fieri? I asked, confused, as the man offered who was confused with something about it which comes him. "No cigar," Bramsbury said before continuing with, "He still holds up, hushily under the mountain with the assumed name. Something that rhymes with brown electric trade markers. That could be the least another of 3 or 4 years until he is found. So what happens now? I asked Bramsbury as he lit me a cigarette. Well, I need some strict assurance from you, and will testify at court against Mr. Big and that boy Sylvester Stallone. You can count on me, detective, I proclaimed happily as Sam Bramsbury smiled attentively at me as a really cheesy music began playing in the background. On the afternoon of Boxing Day, I was testifying in court against Mr. Big and Sylvester Stallone. The judge wasn't a big chungus, of course. He had about 50 chins. So you two were ready to commit the acts of terrorism just to save your business? I shall say, put the both of you away for 50 years, the judge yelled angrily. Oh yes, give him a whisk-star whip, I thought confidently to myself. The rats were being flushed out by their holes, and they were being able to be a pleasure to put those two I sent to prison. However, there was something false about the Bramsbury that I failed to recognize. The judge sighed and said, but because of your fine families, because I am a corrupt son of a gun, I am dropping all charges. He then slammed his mighty gavel down, and those Big and Stallone smiled as they made their way out of the courthouse, accompanied by a band of pigs. Forget the band, brothers. The band of pigs in the film I just wanted to see. I should sell that to Hollywood. And with that said, Sam's help, I was able to go under a witness protection of the programs that was sort to protect me from Guy and Sylvester Stallone. Thankfully, though, Stallone and Big were spared from having jail time for the both men who faced consequences. Big was forced me to leave the country by a local station master, and upon returning home to Scotland to find my childhood friends were cold as ice. However, he eventually managed to remedy the situation by landing some work on the shipyards. It all worked out until a smelly cook gave me some big smelly stew, which gave me a bad stomachache. Well, Mr. Big was a delightful fella. Sorry about the salmonella. Well, meanwhile, Stallone's acting career had been seriously plummeted after his relationship with Guy Fieri, as he published by the L.A. Times. I last heard from Stallone was busy trying to advertise me a gig with his whereabouts. I began beginning a normal life into breaking people's homes and stealing books because I have become quite an arsehole thanks to the Mr. Big's influence. I never thought that one big bootleg could serve such a disastrous consequences. So, guess it's true to say that the Hollywood perhaps society is to blame. Now if you excuse me, friends, I've got a house party to set up for Fort Wallace to attend. I'm going to impress the partygoers and rap with my rad dance moves. I had previously tried to impress the people who rode my trains and had rad dance moves, but I had no such luck due to Mr. Big waving his finger right in front of me, while pulling out an incredibly smug face. Oh my giddy aunt, there is so much of smug in this story. If there's any more smug, I think I'm going to crap myself. If you ever were in a cafe and you think the cashier is awful look like Mr. Stallone, get the hell out of here. Run and don't look back. Maybe then you'll be safe. Although I've grown the old bull bill for strains for me, but as for us all who truly believe. And that, my little pretties, was the Polar Express bootleg version. A Polar Express funny pasta written by Matthew Bumford. Matthew Bumford, thank you so much for writing this story. I do appreciate this story. You did a pretty good job with this story. I really do like it. Thank you so much for sending this to me. I really do appreciate it. So, with that being said, my final thoughts on this story. Alright, so since this story was a really long one, I'm going to keep the review as short as I possibly can. Overall, I found this story to be really funny in many ways I could count. Yes, I did have to take multiple takes because I stifled a few laughs here and there. It was actually really funny and very believable, even though it's a funny pasta, it's not meant to be taken seriously. I could visualize, all this happening and stuff. It was actually pretty interesting. And now, to be completely honest, I definitely do appreciate the good grammar that was used in the story, as well as the sentence structuring and the storyline is, an interesting concept. Everything about this, in my opinion, is the most interesting concept when it came to that. So, I could definitely say that I really do like this story. It was actually a pretty interesting one at that. Now, you guys are probably asking if I have seen this movie, for Christmas. Yes, I have seen it for Christmas, and, I definitely have to say that it's a pretty interesting concept. I really do have to say that I really do like how this all went out. It was really funny, in my opinion. It actually turned out to be a really cool, interesting concept. So, well, with that being said, I definitely have to say, To Matthew Bumford, you did a really good job with this story. I really do like how this story went out. So, with that being said, I'm definitely going to say that right now, that this story was absolutely amazing, really well done and made, and I do appreciate that the story actually was pretty good. Now, I'm just going to keep the review short as I possibly can because it's a long story, but not only that, there's not really much, negatives to say about it or anything for that matter because this story was actually pretty good. I really do appreciate how good this story was. So, I will be getting to your other stories eventually, Matthew Bumford. I would like to say thank you so much for writing this story. This story was amazing. You did a really good job. So, I'm going to wrap up this review by saying this. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is what I always continue to say. This is simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas or funny pastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story would have to be a 10 out of 10. It's a great story, great concept. I do like how everything went out. It was just amazing. Really like this story a lot, Matthew Bumford, so I really gotta say, you do know how to make a really good funny pasta. I'm just saying that right now. It's a pretty good story. So with that being said, I'm going to say this. What did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you happen to be brand new here on this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell when I upload so that you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out of here. And I'll be catching you all in the next video. So peace out. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.